Welcome to the deep dive. We try to unpack these complex topics, really get to the core. And today, we're diving into something that feels, well, incredibly relevant right now. It's about navigating just this flood of information, the sheer volume of voices out there. Think about it. You hear from scientists, economists, futurists, social activists, politicians, established religions, even new age philosophies. It seems like everyone has their vision of the future, their solution. It can just feel totally overwhelming trying to figure out who to even listen to, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's like you're standing in this massive, noisy marketplace, and everyone's shouting, claiming they have the secret sauce for a better world. You want to be informed, obviously, but
Yeah.
actually sorting through it all. That's the real challenge. Discerning what's truly valuable.
Exactly. Which naturally brings us to this really fundamental question. How do you choose? Who do you believe? Now, our source for this deep dive, it offers a pretty fascinating perspective, maybe even a bit provocative. It suggests that deep down, we often end up gravitating towards and, well, believing whoever promises us what we really want inside.
And that's where you really need that critical self-awareness. You have to ask why you're drawn to a voice,
Hmm.
especially when you're looking for answers on the big stuff,
Hmm.
life paths, spiritual questions. Being mindful of who that voice is and why it resonates with you, that becomes just paramount.
Right. Which really sets up our mission for today's deep dive. We're going to explore this whole concept of false prophets. But, and this is key, we're looking at it through a very specific, unique lens from our source material. It gives us a distinct framework for trying to identify both true and, well, false guides in the world today. And just to set the scene, the material kicks off by referencing a really timeless warning. It's attributed to Jesus from Matthew 7:5. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. That's a powerful image, isn't it? Immediately frames this whole discussion with a unique spiritual angle on leadership and solutions.
It really does. So, okay, if we're supposed to beware of the false ones, we first need to understand what makes a true prophet, at least according to this source. Our material defines a prophet as someone who's been sent from the light to show mankind the way to the promised land. Now, the light here seems to refer to a kind of divine guiding intelligence. And the promised land isn't a physical place. It's more like a metaphor for humanity's true ultimate state of being. And crucially, the source adds that this true guide doesn't just point the way, they can actually lead followers there.
That's a really important distinction. It's about active guidance, not just, handing out a map. Okay, so the source then gives us four specific traits, four things to look for in a true prophet. First up, their profound knowledge of what it calls the laws operating in creation. And the material really emphasizes that these universal laws, they only will determine where we end up. It's quite definitive.
Yeah, and what's really crucial about that first point is the idea underpinning it. It's saying that reality, true reality, isn't shaped by what humans want or, the latest trends. It's shaped by these unchangeable, fundamental spiritual principles.
Mhm.
A bit like how gravity works in the physical world,
Yeah.
right? It just is. And that flows right into the second trait.
Which is?
Well, that the true prophet also knows the ultimate destination. But, and here's the catch again, it's a destination dictated by the laws of creation, not as man thinks or wishes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not some, pie-in-the-sky utopia cooked up by human intellect. It's a destination defined by these universal spiritual laws.
I see. So it's less about inventing the future and more about aligning with what is, with
Right.
these underlying laws.
Precisely. It's about working with the grain of creation, not against it.
Okay. And the third characteristic.
The third one is this insistence that all activities must be driven by man's desire to comply with the will of the Creator. That suggests a really deep spiritual alignment, kind of a surrender in everything we do, every action.
Wow. Okay. That's a high bar.
It is. And the fourth trait, which sort of ties it all together, is their acute and deep insight into the activities and manifestation of the laws of creation. This isn't just intellectual book smarts. It's described as a profound, almost intuitive grasp of how these spiritual laws actually play out in the real world, how they impact our daily lives.
Okay. So let's try and boil this down. We've got these four traits: knowledge of the laws, knowledge of the true destination, insistence on aligning with the Creator's will, and deep insight into how it all works. What's the core takeaway here? Our source sums it up nicely, doesn't it?
It does. It says, basically, a true prophet understands the spiritual underpinnings of problems and that true lasting solutions must be driven by the Spirit. That's the fundamental idea. Solutions have to come from that deeper spiritual level to actually last.
That's a really clear framework. And it allows the source to make this, well, quite interesting leap, connecting it to today's world. It suggests that a lot of people proposing solutions to what it called end time challenges, the big global crises we face, even if their solutions are grounded in science or economics or sociology, they could still be seen as playing the role of a prophet
Okay.
in that warning sense.
Exactly. Especially if their proposals are, and this is the quote, devoid of spiritual insights.
Right. And here's where it gets really direct. The source basically says ignorance of the duties and responsibility of a true prophet makes all such false prophets. And then, pretty bluntly, it adds, many false prophets abound today, even though they may not describe themselves as such. Oh. So we're not just talking about religious figures here. It could be anyone offering a big vision, a path forward that lacks this specific spiritual foundation.
It really widens the lens, doesn't it? It urges us, you, the listener, to maybe reevaluate a lot of the influential voices you hear every day. And to help with that evaluation, the material then gives us 6 clear indicators, 6 ways to spot these modern false prophets.
Okay, let's get into these. These seem really crucial for practical discernment. Indicator number 1. Placing all hopes on man's ability and having little or no reference to the Creator in their offerings. The source sees human self-will as fundamentally contrary to the will of the Creator. And importantly, it sees that self-will as the root of many problems. So logically, any solution that ignores the Creator's will, it argues, can only offer temporary alleviation, a band-aid fix.
Yeah, and it gives a really concrete example, quarrels and wars. The source posits that these conflicts stem directly from man's disregard of the Creator's injunction that we live as our brother's keeper. The implication is pretty profound. It means no new peace conference or revolution, no matter how well-meaning, will actually prevent future crises if it doesn't address that core spiritual disregard. It's about getting to the root cause, not just managing the symptoms.
So if you hear, say, a prominent economist proposing a purely financial fix for poverty, or maybe a political leader promising harmony just through new laws, this source would ask, does that solution really address the deeper spiritual imbalance that it sees as the actual problem?
Exactly. It's a challenging question to ask.
Okay, what's the second indicator?
Number 2 is about focus. Constant projection of themselves, seeking affirmation by inviting likes and followers. This is contrasted really sharply with what the source calls the hallmark of a true prophet, which is described as humble and self-effacing service of the Creator through the help that the prophet brings to mankind. So it's about selfless service versus, personal branding or chasing popularity.
But that resonates today, doesn't it? Thinking about public figures. Is their main output building their own audience or genuinely conveying a message for its own sake?
It's a useful filter. Okay, number 3.
Right.
Someone who has a dogmatic demeanor or would not entertain any discussions or questions. The source is quite blunt here. It says such a person has little respect for other people and is at heart egotistical, even if they feign false humility.
Mm.
And these traits, it argues, just aren't compatible with love for one's fellow man, which would be, a core motivation for a true guide in this framework.
That makes a lot of sense. A true guide, according to this source, would actually recognize their limitations, right? They wouldn't claim to know everything outside their specific expertise, especially when it comes to, say, the practical implementation of spiritual solutions. They wouldn't pretend to have all the answers for every detail.
Exactly. There's a humility there. Which brings us to the 4th point, focusing on responsibility. Someone who makes promises of salvation without stressing accountability for one's actions. The source emphasizes that a true prophet is acutely aware of the law of responsibility, basically karma, or the idea that actions have consequences. So they would never contradict this fundamental principle in their teaching. In this view, there's no free pass or instant fix without personal effort and taking responsibility.
No shortcuts. Okay, number 5.
The 5th indicator. They ignore, condone, or promote vices in the name of freedom, humanness, or understanding. A true prophet, our source insists, would never compromise on the laws of creation as the yardstick by which to live or assess our actions. There's a really clear, unwavering moral compass implied here, tied directly back to those universal spiritual laws we talked about earlier.
Right, no watering down of principles for convenience or popularity.
Exactly. And finally, the 6th indicator. This is one the source itself flags as potentially difficult for some people. It says this one may be very difficult for many in our egalitarian world to accept, sometimes even believers. And that is someone who teaches or suggests that man is divine or possesses divinity within.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I can see why that might be challenging today. with a lot of focus on self-empowerment and finding the divine within. How does the source justify this stance?
Well, the material explains it from the perspective of a true servant of the Creator. From that viewpoint, a true prophet will abhor the blasphemy in such assertion. It sees it as a fundamental misunderstanding of our relationship with the Creator. To make the point clearer, it uses this really striking analogy.
Okay, what's the analogy?
It says claiming human divinity is almost as good as believing or claiming that a tiny 1.5-volt flashlight battery at the height of its improvement will suddenly acquire the power output and attributes of a megavoltage power station. It's emphasizing a fundamental qualitative difference in nature and power. It suggests humanity, however much we grow or evolve, remains distinct from the Creator.
That analogy certainly paints a vivid picture of their perspective. It makes the point very clearly. Okay, so just to quickly recap then, our deep dive today, we've really explored this distinction between true and false guidance, but through the very specific lens of our source material. In this particular framework, a true prophet is someone deeply connected to spiritual laws, to the Creator's will, understanding that real, lasting solutions have to be spiritually driven.
Right. And false prophets, well, they might be well-intentioned, they might even have scientifically sound ideas. But according to this source, they lack that specific spiritual insight, that foundational alignment with the Creator's will and laws. They're missing that key ingredient.
So we really invite you, the listener, to consider these 6 indicators we've discussed, maybe use them as a unique kind of lens for discernment. When you're evaluating all these different voices, offering visions of the future, whether they come from science, politics, spirituality, wherever.
And as a sort of final provocative thought to leave you with, our source highlights this powerful piece of advice, again attributed to Jesus, about seeking truth. We should seek, and that we shall find. But then there's a crucial condition: if we seek correctly.
If we seek correctly. What does the source say that means?
The source adds its own crucial qualifier. Openness, meaning seek without preconceived ideas or only for selfish reasons. It really emphasizes this purity of intention needed in the search for truth, suggesting that how you seek is maybe just as important as what you're seeking.
That's something to really mull over. Seeking without preconceived notions or purely selfish motives.
Yeah. And the source does conclude on a somewhat hopeful note. It says that help is always sent from the light to mankind, through messengers who can show the right path to salvation. But again, there's a condition. This help is for those who are ready to listen and follow the instructions sent. Go. And it finishes by stating that there are such true helpers on earth today.
So the encouragement really is to reflect. Reflect on the voices you encounter every day. And maybe try applying these unique criteria from our Duck Dive to critically evaluate who you choose to believe, who you choose to follow, especially when you're looking for answers or perspectives on life's biggest questions and challenges. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.